Have you ever lost something inside your own home, only to find it later in two places at once? You're certain you left your earbuds beside the sofa. You search every room, your pockets, your bag. Finally, you find them tucked into a coat you wore yesterday. Relief. But when you sit back down, there they are again. Still on the sofa, identical. Same scratches, same wear, no explanation. Some people believe moments like this are glitches, places where reality briefly overlaps with another version of itself. Usually the object is small, but what if it wasn't? What if it were a child? In April of 1922, in the remote hamlet of Goaz-Aludu in Brittany, France, lived a 2-year-old girl named Pauline Picard. The village was little more than a single dwelling, surrounded by farmland and forest. Everyone knew everyone. Identity wasn't written down. It was simply remembered. You belonged because people said you did. Most families here spoke Breton, not French. Pauline did too. It was the language of home, prayer, and childhood. Pauline was the youngest of 9 children. Golden-haired, blue-eyed, cherished not just by her family, but by the countryside itself. Her parents, François and Marianne Picard, owned the largest farm in the area. They let Pauline wander freely, playing among fields and animals, watched by neighbors who treated her as their own. Nothing bad ever happened here. That is, until April 6, 1922. That evening, Marianne called Pauline home for supper. No answer. At first, no one worried. Children wandered. Pauline always came back. But minutes passed, then an hour, and suddenly, everyone realized something was terribly wrong. More than 150 villagers dropped everything and started searching. Fields, ditches, woods, barns. They searched so thoroughly. One priest even said later on, if someone had lost a wallet, it would have been found. Nothing. No footprints, no torn clothing, no cry. Pauline Picard had vanished as if the land itself had swallowed her. Police were called. Rumors spread quickly. Some said a chimney sweep had passed through the village that day, tempting children with sweets. Others claimed to have seen 2 unfamiliar young adults watching the farm. Another man, half joking, half sinister, remarked that he might take Pauline away. More unsettling theories followed. Some reckoned that Pauline had been taken by gypsies. Maybe she had wandered into the forest and been eaten by a wild boar. As days turned into weeks, hope thinned. By the 3-week mark, the point when survival becomes unlikely, the Picards began preparing themselves for the unthinkable. Then, a miracle. In early May, police in Cherbourg, a distant port city over 400 kilometers away, contacted the Picard family. Cherbourg was not a village. It was a place people passed through. Sailors, migrants, children without papers. A city where names were often missing and questions were asked later. They had found a little girl's silhouette wandering the streets. Her age matched Pauline's. Her hair was the same golden color. Her eyes, deep blue. When a photograph was shown to Marianne Picard, she collapsed in tears. "That's my daughter," she cried. "My poor little Pauline." No one could explain how a 2-year-old had traveled such a distance alone. But grief does not argue with miracles. The Picards boarded a train immediately. At the Cherbourg Hospice, similar to a hospital, with a focus on comfort and improving quality of life for those with severe illnesses or conditions, the reunion with the child was, to say the least, strange. The child did not smile. She did not reach for them. And she did not even recognize her parents or any of her siblings. When spoken to in Breton, the only language Pauline had ever known, she stared blankly, mute, frightened, underfed, but medically healthy. For 2 hours, the Picards hesitated. Was this really their daughter? Authorities urged patience. Doctors explained the behavior away as simply trauma-induced amnesia. If Pauline had been abducted, abused, or displaced, silence would make complete sense. And crucially, everyone else recognized her. Officials, neighbors, even the police escort. She looked exactly like Pauline. And so, in a world that trusted appearances and authority, that was enough. So the family brought her home. On May 12th, Pauline returned to Kwaz Aludu. The village celebrated. But something was wrong. The child flinched near the fields where Pauline had disappeared. She cried at familiar places. She still did not understand words she once spoke fluently. And in a place like this, where language was identity, that absence felt like a tear in reality. Days later, she finally spoke, but only vaguely mentioning a ragged woman she had been with. Unease settled in. Then came Yves Martin, a 49-year-old farmer. He entered the Picard home, looked at the child, and asked quietly, in Breton, "Is that really her?" Then he began shaking. "God forgive me," he screamed. "I am guilty." He fled the farm, laughing hysterically. The next day, he was committed to an asylum, and the village tried to forget. 2 weeks later, they still couldn't. On May 26th, a cyclist discovered something near the Picard farm. In a ditch, less than a mile from the house, lay the mutilated body of a small child, naked, decapitated, hands and feet removed. Beside her, carefully folded, were clothes, Pauline's clothes. The same black and white checkered dress, the same navy jacket, the same tights she had worn the day she vanished. Nearby lay something else, the skull of a fully grown man. Still no explanation. Worse still, this area was one of the few areas that had been searched repeatedly after Pauline first disappeared all those weeks back in April, which meant the body had not been there before. Someone wanted it found. As time would tell, identification was near impossible. Animals, by now, had damaged those remains. Time had erased any certainty, and an autopsy revealed a stab wound to the groin area. But investigators hesitated at what that exactly meant. Was this murder? Exposure? Officially, the judge ruled it accidental, order restored. But no one truly believed that. The Picards were asked a question that no parent should ever face. Is this your child? Francois answered, "It's her clothes, but is it her body? The other one is so similar." The miracle had become a nightmare. So now they were only left to ponder, who was the girl now living in their home? They returned her to the orphanage. She was renamed Marie-Louise Pauline. 2 months later, she began speaking fluent Breton. Newspapers declared her Breton by birth. Adoption requests poured in. Then, in January 1924, she suddenly died of measles. Her real name was never known. The Picards buried the mutilated child they found as Pauline. They engraved her gravestone not with the date of death, but with the date of disappearance, April 6, 1922. As if even they could not say which moment mattered more. They were later buried beside her. To this day, over a century later, that mystery still remains unsolved. No DNA has been recovered. No confession has been made. No explanation has been offered or investigated. Only a question that refuses to stay buried. Which Pauline was real? And where did the other one come from?